Back to Bibby has the open shot. And like that, you don't like NBA basketball. And now, ladies and gentlemen of Moto, put those hands together. Only tonight's starting five for your Sacramento Kings.
You're listening to the Cowbell Kingdom podcast, brought to you by Jiffy Lube. Jiffy Lube, fast and convenient automotive services with over 25 locations in the area. Visit them at jiffylubeka.com for coupons and locations today. Now, here's your host, James Ham.
Welcome to the Cowbell Kingdom podcast, brought to you by Jiffy Lube. I am James Ham, and joining me today is a good friend, a buddy from the Sacramento Kings media room, Mr. Sean Cunningham of News10. Sean, what's going on?
James, how's it going, man? It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's been a crazy week, hasn't it? I think we've seen a little bit too much of each other, and we're going to see a whole lot more over the next couple of weeks. But there's all of this DeMarcus Cousins news. What is the latest that you're hearing? And you and I can kind of compare notes here for the people.
Yeah, I mean, I think it caught some of us by surprise, knowing that he went to the hospital, spent some time in the hospital on Tuesday. I thought it was funny because that morning, going to shoot around, you and I attended shoot around, and obviously we were talking about DeMarcus. Oh, is he out there? Is he out there? Is he participating in shoot around? And as everyone knows, or if you don't know, shoot arounds are somewhat rather monotonous, but anyway, he comes out, and we've been told that, yeah, he's here. He's going to participate a little bit. We don't really know to what extent. And then we hear that he's got this, crazy beard. It looks like a guy who's been on the couch for the past few days. And
he looked a little
totally
grizzled.
Going through yeah, definitely. I mean, it's just a gnarly looking beard for him. And then all of a sudden he comes walking out of the curtain. We both look at him, and he's scratching that beard like he just woke up. But he was in good spirits. It looked like his energy was okay. I couldn't really tell, and maybe you'll disagree, I don't know, but I couldn't really tell that he was, terribly sick. He looked fine. I thought there'd be no chance in hell he wouldn't play that night.
I agree.
But then a lot can happen, like 6 hours later, and all of a sudden, as you saw before the game, I arrived a little bit later than you did, and you saw him warm up, and he walked past you, and first thing I see is you said, I don't think he's going to go tonight. And I'm like, come on, really? Like, there's no way. And you told me how bad he looked, and I was like, no, he's going to play. And then I go over to chat with Malone just briefly, and Malone, even at that point, still said, yeah, he's questionable. I think he's going to give it a go. DeMarcus Cousins at 75% is still better than most of the league, and we'll see how he is. We might have to watch his minutes a little bit. And I'm thinking, great, he's going to play. And then 45 minutes later, we find out he's not going to play. And then you get the hospital trip, and then you go from there on, and now we know he's not going to be here the rest of the week and out the next two games against Indiana and Orlando. And I think that might be a little bit more precautionary, just to kind of see how he is and make sure he gets the rest that he needs.
It's strange, though, isn't it? I mean, we're sitting here watching him. He looks fine. I mean, and again, I don't want to call somebody out for not being sick. I do believe that DeMarcus Cousins is sick. But this is not a typical thing. I mean, we both have been around the league long enough to see guys get sick in the past, and I've never seen a player miss 5 games due to a flu bug or a virus, whatever they're calling it. I do know that he is getting headaches, and he keeps getting a fever that is kind of hit and miss. But I was told after shoot-around that, look, don't be convinced that he's playing, because there's a good chance that he goes home and he starts feeling bad again, and then he's not going to be able to go. But, man, I was just as shocked as you. And Malone thought he was playing. He thought he might be a little battered, and maybe he couldn't play 36 minutes. Maybe he could only give you, 28 good minutes. But I think everyone was caught off guard by what happened there. And then, again, it's really strange to me that on Wednesday you put out a press release that he was in the hospital the day before, and then he's done for the week. It's like, wait a sec, what if he feels great? What if he feels great on Friday morning, is ready to go, and you're already putting him out? So I just think, the whole situation is strange, don't you think?
It's a little strange. I mean, I would agree. Look, we don't see a lot of guys miss this much time with a virus, viral infection, flu, if you want to call it that. But I think it's what we have to be careful here is, this guy, he plays a lot. He's never really been the guy that sits out a lot of games, or at least a good portion of games. He's a workhorse. He takes a beating. This guy, the thing that caught my eye more than anything, not the viral infection, not not him being in the hospital, the fact that they said he needed the rest. That kind of spurned a little bit. I don't, whatever, that caught my eye, because when you see a guy who needs rest and having a hard time resting, and this viral infection is preventing him from getting the necessary rest that he needs, he's suffering with headaches, and the temperature is still an issue. For fans calling him out and kind of being a little harsh on him on social media, this, flu bugs, viral infections, you can get so many different kinds, and, not everyone reacts to him the same way. I mean, Michael Jordan can go out in the NBA Finals and do what he did, and guess what? If this was the NBA Finals, I'm pretty sure he'd probably give it a go. But that being said, if they're talking about what you need is rest, and the doctor is saying, hey, the next 2 games you're out, let's get to next week, that's a little bit of a red flag. I'm going to take the doctor's word for it, because I don't think look, the coaching staff and the team want him out there any way they can, right? If the doctor's saying you need the rest, I'm going to side with the doctor on that one.
And you know
what, not to cut you off, James, but that being said, would it be a shock to any of us to see him play on Saturday?
Absolutely not. I would.
No.
I'm almost going to be shocked if he doesn't magically, pull a Willis Reed and come out with a box of Kleenex and limp out there and blow his nose and then go out and play. He is a warrior, and I think that's one thing that people need to know, that Cousins is a guy that wants to play. The other thing he does is he wants to get the accolades that come with winning, and sitting on the sideline doesn't help your MVP chances. It doesn't help your all-star chances. He's coming off a Player of the Week award, and then boom, he's out. And I think a lot of this might play into just a long summer of basketball for both he and Rudy Gay. I mean, we've seen Gay go down with the Achilles tendonitis. Now you got Cousins with this bug. These guys really were beat. They played a lot of basketball late into the summer. They came into training camp tired. I know DeMarcus, even early in preseason, was like, man, I am beat. And I think they just, maybe both of them are a little worn out going forward.
Yeah, I think you're probably onto something there. Look, I mean, he didn't have a summer, and he didn't want a summer. He wanted to be able to work. That international competition is going to wear on you, him and Rudy both. Look, Rudy sure took his shots during the summer as well. I mean, taking the shot to the jaw, needing the dental work. Yeah, you're right. And you know what? I don't know if I would necessarily chalk this one up to it, but there is the parallel. When the doctor is saying you're needing the rest, I can see the parallel being drawn. DeMarcus will say that's nonsense and that had no effect. And granted, he's tired, but he's a warrior and he can fight through it. But I just think I was a little concerned with some of the heat that he was taking. I don't know if I think maybe early on people were like, okay, you've missed 3 games already. What's going on? And then he ends up in the hospital. And because he's ended up in the hospital, I think a lot of people should probably take a step back and go, wow, okay, I got you. Right? I mean, at this point, you gotta kind of give it to him and just really see where it goes from here. Now, the one thing that was interesting even before he went to the hospital was the kind of tongue-in-cheek comment made by Rudy Gay, of all people, following the loss to, I believe it was Memphis, right?
Very strange.
Where he says, I don't know what we got to do. We got to go back to the drawing board. And for people who didn't hear that, he says, we got to go back to the drawing board. We got to do something, get a B12 shot, get a flu shot. I don't know, something.
And that seemed like it was aimed right at number 15. I mean, that was...
Yeah, I mean, it may be a little tongue-in-cheek, but certainly he's talking about the starters and their effort and their defensive effort, and that's the one thing these players are all on the same page about, and they're echoing the complaints from their coach, that's for sure.
Yeah, the one good thing that's come out of this, though, Sean, is that it's given a couple of guys an opportunity to play that weren't going to play. I mean, we had the Ryan Hollins game, followed by the Reggie Evans game, followed by the Derek Williams game. And I think each of those players had impressive performances in their own right. Do you think this can help a team, like sort of bring a guy who's not playing and get him ready in case, they do need to start filtering him in a little bit more here and there?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's that next man up philosophy. Some guys, that's the old knack on Derek Williams, right? The consistency, just needing consistency. One game he'll look like, an all-star level caliber player. And Michael Malone says all the time, when the guy is aggressive and running the floor, he's a great player. But it's what happens in the next few games after that. Ryan Hollins is a great example. He put in the starting lineup in San Antonio, I believe, or in Dallas. I can't remember which one it was.
San Antonio,
has
15
the hot
and
start.
6. Yeah.
Yeah, has the hot start. And we're all joking about it. Boy, if you're getting 15 points out of Ryan Hollins, you better have won that game, right?
Yeah.
That's the type of thing you don't want to waste that. And then he comes out and just totally wets the bed here at home. The starts here at home, gets kicked out of the games. Granted, you can argue whether or not he deserved any of those technicals, but you can't be getting kicked out of the game. That's bad. I mean, that was poor, especially when you're a guy who is just salivating for that opportunity. Here you are, you've got playing time. Not only do you have playing time, you're starting. You're put in that starting lineup. The coach has that much faith in you, and you really kind of wet the bed so far with Ryan Hollins. That wasn't great, but like you said, you've had Derek Williams kind of shine in one game, and then you had Reggie Evans shine in another game where he's grabbing 20 boards, and in the next game he can't hold on to a rebound to save his life. And
really, that was the
ends up costing
difference.
him the game.
Yeah, that was the difference in the game. It was that Reggie Evans had probably 3 or 4 balls roll off his hands in the closing seconds that gave other opportunities to the Toronto Raptors.
And I wonder, too, James, I mean, these guys are creatures of habit, right? So, if you know starting the day, hey, DeMarcus is out, I've got 6 hours to wrap my head around the fact that I'm starting tonight, I'm going in, I'm being inserted in the starting lineup. I mean, they really found out maybe an hour before the game at most, before this last game when we found DeMarcus wasn't going to be able to play for the third straight game, and then Hollins is now inserted into the starting lineup. Granted, they prepare for all situations, but as a player mentally, you're like, okay, I'm playing tonight. I know what to expect. Here's my workload, as opposed to I'm going to prepare the same way, and whenever coach calls on me, I'll be ready. I think there's different ways. Guys may say verbally that, oh, you know what, we prepare the same way. But I think mentally that approach changes depending upon whether you're going to fit this certain role tonight or whether you're just going to be ready and waiting for your number to be called.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the one thing that you can point to is that the starters came out so incredibly flat in the Toronto game, where you're just like, oh my gosh, the first and third quarters, they were so bad. And the second unit was incredible. For probably the first time this season, you could really point to the second unit. I think they finished something like 20 of 31 from the field and scored 57 or 58 points, and we're talking about Sessions and Stauskas and a little bit of Carl Landry, who's had some real struggles, and Reggie Evans. This team, it's still coming along, and they're still running on, if this is a 12-cylinder, they're still running on about 7 cylinders. They haven't really had a stretch where all the guys, all 10 that are going in the game, are really giving you an honest effort every single night. And you're kind of waiting for that moment, and then you get to this December, and it's so soft, the schedule flips on you, and they have an opportunity to, out of 15 games, they easily could have gone 11 or 12 and 4 and 3. They could have won 11 or 12 games in this month and got themselves right into a good conversation. But now you've got Cousins injured. There's some question marks. You don't really know what's going to happen. How do you see this month playing out now that we're sort of seeing this shaky start?
Yeah, boy, that's tough because it's hard to forecast. You're 9-9. I mean, you could almost make the argument that, boy, you're really fortunate to be 9-9. And I feel like, they've had their share of lumps here during this 4-game losing streak, but they've also played some really damn good teams. Memphis, Toronto, those are 2 of the top teams in either conference, in the Western and Eastern Conference. I think it's easy to say that they are missing a huge opportunity with the bad timing, the poor timing, right, of Cousins being out, with even on the road trip when Rudy's battling his injury, and even Darren Collison for that matter. I still maintain that Darren Collison is kind of the guy that isn't getting enough of the respect he's due, because I think he's been fantastic. And in games where he doesn't play, I think the team really struggles on both ends of the floor. That being said, in 2 years they haven't won a game without DeMarcus Cousins, and that's kind of that's kind of the elephant in the room. And knowing you're not going to have him here for these next 2 games that are more of the cupcake schedule, the Indiana and the Orlando on Friday and Saturday, those are games you should be expected to win with the start that you've had. I know the team is like trying to tell the players, look, don't expect to win. Don't lie down. This isn't going to be a given, especially without DeMarcus. I think these next two games are crucial to the successes of December. But that being said, it is a favorable schedule. You don't have to go anywhere out of California until the end of the month. You have a ton of home games for the holidays. I think that's such a benefit, and I think that they will be able to have a successful month, if not better than the month they had in November.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think they are 0-14 without DeMarcus Cousins over the last two seasons in the Malone era. And the four teams that they just lost to in a row, combined, what do I have it here, 57-17? Yes, 57-16. And you're talking about the best team in the Eastern Conference, one of the best, and three surefire playoff teams in the Western Conference. Some really good opponents. All right, Sean, this team isn't complete though. I mean, we're seeing some guys step up here and there. We're having the moments from Derek Williams and Reggie Evans and Ryan Hollins, but this team is still a piece or two away. Do you see anything brewing, especially here in the month of December? Maybe trying to load up early as opposed to waiting until closer to the trade deadline when a lot of teams are shopping?
Yeah, and I think you have to look at the way the season has started. I think the 9-9 has taken some people even in the front office by surprise. You could argue that they expected this, that hey, they thought everyone else was sleeping on the team, and they always thought that they'd be a team that was at least in the conversation of being a middle of the road team, or if not better than that. The success that they've had, I think, almost needs to make them a little bit more aggressive now. I mean, you kind of look at what you've had with, guys like Ben McLemore who've really stepped up during this time, and you can attribute a lot of their early success to someone like him both ways. I mean, looking like a totally different player than he did last year, someone who's just, exuding confidence and wanting the challenge every night defensively against some of the great two guards in the league. But that being said, and this is no slouch. This is no slight to Nick Stauskas, who's still kind of trying to find his way after his first month in the NBA. But I think it's overly evident that you need shooting on this team, and that should be something that Pete D'Alessandro and his staff are looking at by any way necessary. And I kind of help, but I kind of snicker as I kind of clicked over to Kings.com real brief. And on the front page here is Brady Heslop from up in Reno, who's just lighting it up in the D League. Not to say that they're going to bring him in to help solve any shooting woes in the NBA, but
that dude's going crazy.
They've got to be looking at shooting. Yeah, I mean, my gosh, this guy's getting 40 points. They're shooting nothing but threes up there, and that's a system that nowhere near mimics the Kings system down here. As we all heard early on that they wanted to run similar systems. I mean, it's nowhere near that.
No,
I even asked
crazy.
Eric Moreland. I even asked Eric Moreland jokingly before the game against Toronto. I said, "Were you able to get a three up in there? Did they give you let you shoot a 3-2?" And he just kind of laughed. He says, "No, I wanted to be invited back to Sacramento."
Yeah, I mean, Hayslip is shooting 60% from behind the arc, and he's shooting 15 threes a game. I mean, he's averaging 35 points a game. But his per 36 numbers are even crazier. I mean, he's only playing 29 minutes. And he's just launching and going crazy. I think, I talked to Mike Bratz about this before the Toronto game, and he was very clear that, they've got to work on sort of the two-way game with some of these guys. They're just coming in and having a good time and throwing up a bunch of balls. But, I mean, again, they're scoring 139-something points a game, and they're giving up 138. So, I mean, it's not like other teams are having a tough time adjusting to what you're doing.
Yeah, maybe they're just trying to sell some tickets up there in Reno, I don't know.
It's fun to watch, and I think, the other thing
it's got to be.
And people want to play for you. I think if I'm a guy who goes undrafted, but I'm one of those guys who are right at the break, right, who may or may not make a roster, you're right after the second round, I'm calling the Kings, because if I get to go play for David Arsenal, I'm like, sign me up. I mean, even guys, David Ware is averaging like 17 points a game. James is averaging 20 points a game. I think John Stockton's son is like 17 and 11 assists a
Wow.
night.
Yeah.
He's just dealing. He doesn't even have to
Jeez.
try to deal because he knows as soon as he hands it off, it's going up. So it's crazy. I don't know that it can help out the Sacramento Kings roster anytime this season or down the road, but at least it's entertaining. It's fun to talk about. It's a conversation piece for these guys.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I can agree more. And kind of back to what they're looking for need-wise. I mean, I can't really identify a shooter that I mean, there's plenty of people I could identify and say that's who I might go after. I just really don't know what would be out there in terms this early. Certainly you got to kind of look at some of the teams that are kind of off to woeful starts already. I think Minnesota is one of those teams that you could look at right away. But I mean, someone like Chase Budinger really is someone that I would kind of put a target on. I can't imagine Minnesota really wanting to get rid of him or let him go, but he's something that certainly I would be looking at. But I know fans like to hear names and what's out there, but I think shooting is just one of the several things they would need. I think backup point guard is another. Here we thought Ramon Sessions was going to have be such a key piece to this team, and maybe he still will. He's obviously going through the trials and tribulations right now, trying to fit in and hold on to the basketball and kind of mimic what he did in preseason. But you've got three different point guards, which at times you would think would be a good recipe for success. But you've got three guys that kind of do some different things, and it's leading to a little bit of chaos.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing at the power forward position. You got a couple of guys, you got three guys who can kind of do different things. They can do specific things. Reggie Evans, a rebounder, Carl Landry, the post scorer, an offensive rebounder, and Jason Thompson's giving you some defensive effort, some rebounding, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But if you could meld all of those into one player, you'd be a lot better off. Maybe you've got
no doubt.
Yeah, so maybe Pete Chase is a big name. Maybe he's looking for something, but I just don't know that he has the assets to do what he would really like to do, which is add Kenneth Faried, add a couple of big time scorers to this team to really help them hit that next mark. All right, Sean, I don't want to keep you all night, but let me ask you this: if you're a betting man, how much different is this team a month from now?
I would bet on that. Yeah, I'd bet that there would be quite a difference. I don't know about if we're talking faces and names and roster and just by the roster, but I would say this team will have a move probably by the trading deadline. You said a month from now. I think that'll happen. I don't know how dramatic it'll be. I think they're going to be aggressive as they've shown to do. But I also think the style of play, if barring any injury, and that's always the caveat, the team has shown me that they are competitive, and that's the one I think constant with a Michael Malone team. You may kind of wrinkle your forehead a little bit at some of the things they do offensively. You might be pleasantly surprised of what they've shown defensively this year. But I think the one constant through his teams are they are uber competitive. And talking to Reggie Evans the other night was the biggest difference. He says, we have a confidence that we can win any game. He said before, we might, guys might say that, but there's a real confidence like before the game. Like we have a confidence that we can win any game and we can, handle any situation. And guys are believing that. They're believing in whatever this defensive system, whatever this offensive system that Michael Malone has created. And because of that, they've shown through 18 games that they are extremely a competitive team, because even through all their flaws and all their faults, they haven't been blown out of games. I mean, they've had some big leads, and it's been well documented. They squandered those leads, but they've also been in every game despite these 20-plus turnover efforts. And I think the one game they were really out of was the game against the home opener against Golden State, when it was probably pretty much a wrap by 7 minutes to go left in the game, and Golden State just leaked out and finished the game. But that's the one thing I've seen. Because of their competitive nature, I think this team's going to be pretty good. I think they might be within the conversation for the 8th seed. Playoffs, I still don't think it's really a possibility, but barring any trade, barring any movement, we might be pleasantly surprised here in Sacramento.
I think so too. It's off to at least a fun start, and for those of us who are there every night covering this team, it sure is a lot more palatable.
Yeah, Yeah, and it's funny too because James, they've turned ugly basketball into somewhat of success. Some nights they're just because they're in games. I mean, you're watching the game, go, God, this is hard to watch. But the ugly basketball kind of yields their way sometimes.
I couldn't agree more. The ugly, defensive-minded, free throw, addicted offense that really slows down and grinds out. Sometimes it can be extremely painful to watch for everyone in the building. All right, well, Sean, I don't want to keep you all night. Thank you so much for dropping by. This has been a good chat. It's always nice to get the perspective of someone else who's kind of doing the same thing I'm doing out there, just for a different, avenue. So thanks for dropping by.
You got it, James. Thanks.
All right, that's going to do it for this portion of the Cowbell Kingdom podcast. We will be back. Welcome back to the Cowbell Kingdom podcast. Thank you, Sean Cunningham, for coming in and dropping some serious knowledge. This is the Cowbell Kingdom podcast brought to you by Jiffy Lube. Jiffy Lube, fast and convenient automotive services with over 25 locations in the area. Visit them at jiffylubeka.com for coupons and locations. I am James Ham. Joining me, like always, in the second segment of the Cowbell Kingdom podcast, Mr. Aaron Bruski. What's going on, man?
It's going to be a hard act to follow. I love Sean Cunningham. I hope he was well.
Yeah, he's a good guy. We've been friends for a long time now. I mean, covering this team, this is my 5th year, and he's a very, very good guy, and he's a hard worker. I mean, not just the Kings, but, he is all over the place for News 10 all the time, just as a dedicated producer and reporter, and he wears a lot of hats, so definitely a good guy. So we got a lot of interesting stuff to hash through. All right, Aaron, we've got so many things to talk about. Let's start with the DeMarcus Cousins situation, because I got to be honest, it's very strange. I have no idea what's going on here. I guess I do. I mean, the guy has a viral infection. He looked like he was ready to go on Tuesday. I saw him at shoot-around. Everything looked like it was on the up and up. He shows up. He starts warming up on Tuesday night with Corliss Williamson. Comes off the floor. I see him give the no-go sign to some of the coaching staff, and a couple of minutes later, boom, it's announced that he's out. Then he goes to the hospital, and I mean, we've got pictures of him in the hospital. He gets fluids. He gets admitted to the hospital. This is the strangest situation of all time, because it seemed like it was just some sort of cold, basically, that's kind of spiraled out of control.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of speaks to the almost 24/7 nature of DeMarcus Cousins' coverage in Sacramento. With whatever happens to DeMarcus, the team sort of falls apart without him if he's not playing. And I think folks are still on edge about DeMarcus, because the last 2 years at least have been just really tough with him. And so folks want to know, why is it a multi-game absence when you're sick? I'm sure seeing him in the hospital, that nobody's happy for that. But at the same time, they're like, okay, this is good. This is kind of a serious illness. This isn't something that, perhaps like a chemistry issue, or perhaps, some other reason that he's out. Because most NBA players, might have a game off for being sick. They might have 2 games off. But this length of a viral infection, I've had some nasty viral infections in my life. I would never want to even come close to a basketball court. So I know it can happen, but I think it speaks to the amount of scrutiny that DeMarcus Cousins is under, at least locally.
Yeah, but still, I mean, a viral infection costing you 5 games and predicting out on Wednesday that he's not going to be able to go on Friday or Saturday, I just found really strange. And I don't want to question the Kings, and I don't want to question the guy for being sick. It's more the way that this has been sort of laid out. It's just kind of odd. And I know that even the team seemed to be totally affected by this on Tuesday night. They came out totally flat. The starters looked like they were lost in space. I don't know what was going on. And it totally seemed to throw the team off kilter. And of course, he is their main guy. They are 0-14 in the last 2 years without Cousins in the middle. But this is a huge month. The Kings have so many winnable games. I mean, you look at the next 4 games. First of all, I don't know what's going on. A back-to-back on Friday and Saturday, a home stand, which is really strange. They take on, Indiana on Friday night, Orlando on Saturday night. Then they have Sunday off. They come back and play Monday and Tuesday. So they've got 4 games in 5 nights, 3 of those games at home, 1 in LA against the Lakers. They easily could win all 4 of these games and be right back to 13-9. But that becomes extremely difficult without the services of Cousins. And I think he knows that, but there has to be some sort of I'm just baffled. I am baffled.
Well, I'm cracking up. You mean the chemistry issues in Sacramento weren't completely solved by the signing of Darren Collison?
Well, hey, the chemistry issues, I think it was even Rudy Gay said after the game on Tuesday night, it was like a tongue-in-cheek thing. He said, I don't know what's going on with us, something to the effect that, I guess our players need to go get flu shots and vitamin B12 shots or something. And it sounded like a jab at Cousins. It did.
Let's be real here. I never ever bought this Darren Collison was, the game changer on chemistry in Sacramento, because frankly, we all know, anybody that's been around the team knows where potential chemistry issues have arisen. And it started and ended with DeMarcus Cousins. It's had nothing to do with Isaiah Thomas. It has nothing to do with Darren Collison. If there's a chemistry issue, and that's a big if right now, it would be something like that with DeMarcus. So I think I'm sitting back and waiting to see, can he string together the MVP season that he's been having in between the ears? Can he do that for 82 games? So maybe we're seeing some cracks in the hull. I don't know.
I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. If the guy's sick, the guy's sick. I mean, I have a difficult time handling this one, though, because I did watch him. I watched him warm up, and I guess he's had a reoccurring issue with fever and headaches. So again, I'm not gonna say that I know how he's feeling and that he should be out there. I'm not going to say that. I'll also say this: hearing today that he is feeling a lot better, but they still are listing him out for Friday and Saturday as of today. So even though he is feeling better, they're going to err on the side of caution. I don't want this to come across as me calling out DeMarcus Cousins. That's not what it is at all. I just think that the way that this has been sort of handed to us is very odd, very strange, and the fact that he's going to miss literally over a week of time, 5 games with a flu-type situation that's not a flu, a viral thing, I just find strange.
Yeah, I think you could file it into the strange category. And at the end of the day, I think it just really comes back to folks, no matter how much positive PR comes out of the team and how great, everybody tries to make the Kings 9-9 record seem, it is still a little bit iffy when you if you want to plant your flag in the ground and say DeMarcus Cousins is, turned the corner on all those issues. I think you get something like this and it makes you think twice.
The one thing we do know is this. I'm going to make this bold statement, that the Sacramento Kings need Darren Collison, Rudy Gay, and DeMarcus Cousins on the floor having decent games if they have any chance to win night in and night out.
And that's actually the more interesting story to me is what's happened with Darren Collison in the last 2 games. I would pretty much would be the guy that most folks would say, okay, he might be more down on Darren Collison than most, but he really sold me in the first 10 games or so on just being a solid point guard. But then these last 2 games, it seems like Malone's taken a little bit of added umbrage, so to speak, with his play, particularly on the defensive end. So I don't know if you're seeing something, since you're a little bit closer than I am. That's been more interesting to me, is seeing if there's anything to that angle right there.
I really like Darren Collison. He is growing on me. I've been working on a piece that sort of about the feel of Darren Collison. I'll be honest with you. John and I both, when they made this move, we were very hard on the Kings. We even told Vivek and Mark Mastroff in Las Vegas that we were going to be hard on the Kings because it came down to a really, really, popular player versus a non-popular player coming in. And not that Darren Collison is hated or anything like that in Sacramento, just that he really hadn't, won over anyone in the previous 4 stops that he had been at, where they decided to keep him long term. I mean, the guy has literally played for, I think it's 5 teams in 6 years. Now, I think just to put this out there, I think there is a drinking game for every time that Aaron Bruski mentions Isaiah Thomas on the Cowbell Kingdom podcast. But that's not. Look, I think Collison has struggled the last couple of games, and he's missed 3 games as well. And there's one other game early in the season that I could point to where he flat out was just not there at all. And so if you mix that with the 2 games that he's had there, the 1 game he had earlier, and then the 3 games that he's missed, 6 of the 18 games he hasn't been, quote unquote, Mr. Consistent. And I like what he brings when he's on, and his numbers are very good. What he's bringing to this team is very good, and his leadership is very good. But at the same time, we have had some faltering moments, and the guy who's backing him up has had just a disintegration of play in Ramon Sessions. It's really strange to me to see how this team has kind of developed, and how they still. I mean, they are 9-9. They do have a very, very easy schedule in December. You still have to play those games, but they aren't firing on all cylinders still, and they are still winning. And to me, that is kind of surprising.
Well, there's a couple key players there we've talked about in previous podcasts, but just for the listeners, I'm here to keep balance in the force, because there's more than enough Darren Collison praise to go around in Sacramento. There's more than enough Sacramento Kings praise to go around in Sacramento, and just trying to keep it real there for people. I think Collison, it's early. You never want to measure a team in November. I think like I said, he has impressed me, but yes, he has also disappeared at times. The big measurement here is almost not so much what Darren Collison could bring to the table, because he could have been signed in addition to Isaiah Thomas, but whether the team is better as a result of letting Isaiah Thomas go. That I think is the measuring stick for the off-season decisions. So I like to keep a little balance of the force and not be cheerleading to the extent that some in the media have cheerleaded this team going forward, because frankly, they're 9-9. They've got a long ways to go before they can really call themselves a playoff contender. I love what I see. I love what I see out of Rudy Gay right now. I love what I see when DeMarcus Cousins is on the floor, but they still have major problems with their splits. The bench has come and stepped up while DeMarcus has been out, but typically the case has been when DeMarcus Cousins goes out, the Kings suffer tremendously, and no amount of strong play from Omri Caspi, who's continued to be the man this year, no amount of strong play from him is going to be able to offset the deficiencies that Ramon Sessions has had. Carl Landry can only seemingly play 15 minutes per game. Ryan Hollins did a lot with his opportunity the other night, but he's still not a regular second unit guy. So there's questions there. And when Ramon Sessions played down the stretch for Collison the other night, and this was the second night Mike Malone called Collison out in a row in his post game, Sessions wasn't having a great game. He was having like a passable game with a few offensive outbursts. And so that was interesting to me. I think Mike Malone's saying, hey guys, we're not as good as the record says, so I'm going to put my foot right down and get into a few of you guys.
Yeah, I see it. I see what you're talking about. I am going to point out, though, that, look, the games that the Kings have played here, they've lost 4 in a row. The reason why they went from 9-5 to 9-9, there's no mystery here. The 4 teams they played are a combined 57-16 on the season. I mean, we're talking about the best team in the Eastern Conference, the second best team in the West, the third best team in the West, and the 6th best team in the West, who just happens to be the World Championship Spurs. So, I mean, the Kings have had a very, very difficult schedule. And I know even early on we talked about, their schedule looked difficult, but, you were a little bit like, well, I mean, they did beat Denver twice.
I still am like that, though.
And now Denver's 9-9, though. Denver's a solid team.
They were terrible then. They were losing by 30 every night, and then even Chicago had a couple key injuries. It's weird. Each team the Kings have played, I felt like they have completely snuck up on them and just hit them first, second, third, fourth, and these teams don't know how to deal with DeMarcus Cousins. He's that much of a handful underneath, and I really feel like they've gotten the jump on these teams, and the like for instance, the Clippers. The Clippers, if you listen to anybody that covers the Clippers, they're just pulling their hair out saying, we don't recognize these guys. They've been terrible for the month of November, but they've got a great record. You know, they're one of the teams that's pushing up the strength of schedule for the Kings. So it's a tough schedule, but I'd say it's like a little bit like medium high, not exactly like hot on the grill, so to speak.
Okay, so let's just for sake of argument, I'm just going to tell you this. The Sacramento Kings have played the best team in the Eastern Conference in the Toronto Raptors, and they played the Chicago Bulls, right, who are the fourth best team in the Eastern Conference. Outside of those two games, they have not played another Eastern Conference opponent at all. So 16 of 18 are against the West. They have played all of the top 10 in the West. Every single team that's in the top 10 in the West, they've played. They've played the Pelicans twice. They've played the Spurs twice. They've played the Nuggets twice. These are all, I mean, they've played Golden State. They got hammered, but outside of that, they've played Memphis twice. You know, they're going to play Houston twice here in just a couple of days. I mean, they've played a very, very difficult schedule, and now it flops, man. You got to play the games that are in front of you, and when you come out of this month, if they get it back together, or if they get Cousins back out on the court, I think we're looking at 20 wins. We're looking at a 20-win season coming out of December, going into January, February, March, and part of April. And that's just, to me, it's still surprising, but it does say that you are a pretty decent team, especially when you look at who they've played.
Well, we can agree to disagree on the strength of schedule thing, but I will say this. I have already adjusted my wins projection for the Kings, assuming the guys stay healthy, to 41 wins. And so that speaks to the quality of play that the Kings have, they've shown me. And so there's definitely something to be said for that. There's something to be said for the fact that they're not getting blown out. I mean, they're doing all sorts of other interesting things, giving up big leads, kind of like getting down and then coming back with a scrappy Reggie Evans, or, Omri Caspi has kept them in games a lot this year. They're doing things like that, and they're staying in games. That's a positive for any team, especially a team that's coming off of such a losing tradition over the last 5 years. So I'm not wholly down on them. We're going to find out. They have to take this next 10-15 game stretch and rip off a large chunk of wins if they want to continue talking like a potential playoff team. November is not a time to measure basketball teams. So they get this easy stretch of the schedule. If they do what they're supposed to do, I think when we get to January and February, that's when we're going to really find out, are these guys pretenders or are they contenders for the 8th seed in the West?
Pretenders or contenders? I agree with you. I think it is tough to sort of judge a team, and now it's going to be even tougher when you consider that they have lost Collison for 3 games, and I think all 3 of those are losses. They have lost Rudy Gay for 3 games. They have lost DeMarcus Cousins for 3, going on 5. So it's been sort of hit and miss for this team. And not only that, I'll say this, like on Friday against San Antonio, that was the Ryan Hollins game. And everyone's like, holy cow, look, Ryan Hollins comes out of nowhere. Then they come back and they play Memphis on Sunday. That's the Reggie Evans game where Reggie Evans goes nuts. Then on Tuesday you come out and it's the Derek Williams game. It's like, where did Derek Williams come from? And I don't – this isn't really out there because I'll put this out there through the podcast because it wasn't – he went a little Marshawn Lynch in the locker room after the game. So Derek Williams, okay, first of all, let me explain some things about Derek Williams. First of all, Derek Williams is a very, very bright kid, and he's very young. I think people forget just how young he is. I think he's still only 23 years old, and yeah, I mean, he's born in 1991. He's very, very young, but he's bright, and he's articulate, and he has a lot of interesting things to say typically, but he's been kind of just put on the shelf and written off by most people. I don't think we've been mean to him, but, Rui wrote a piece about, is Derek Williams' time in Sacramento coming to an end? And whether anyone wants to get mad at someone or not, Derek Williams' time in Sacramento is coming to an end. I mean, whether it's now, whether it's at the trade deadline, whether it's at the end of the season, his cap hold, his minimum that the Kings have to offer him and everything else is so astronomical that there's no way. I mean, he has like a $12 million cap hold coming into the summer. The Kings just aren't keeping Derek Williams. There's no way he makes it, past the first day of free agency. They'll just waive him and he'll be gone. But he's been ignored. And he comes in the other night, and he was phenomenal. I don't know what got into him. And when I got to the locker room with him, and it's just me and my camera guy, Kamani, and we're standing there, and it's like, so, quality game, what was different? Just being aggressive, man. Just being aggressive. Okay, so 18 points and 4 rebounds on 8 of 12 shooting in 14 minutes. Was there something different that was happening? Just being aggressive. Just being aggressive. Yeah. I'm like, I'm getting Marshawn Lynched here. Yeah, and
he's in a tough spot, man. He's got all the expectations. You can tell he thinks he has the game. He probably feels like he just needs more opportunities. He rocks. You know what I'm really most impressed about is he rocks the booty call haircut, and he would the Jamie Foxx booty, and he would be the lead in the Jamie Foxx booty call sweepstakes in the Kings locker room. But Ben McLemore just looks like Jamie Foxx and also has the booty call hair. So I just I praise both of them for their hair.
For
as
going
much as any
the booty call hair. Look at Aaron Bruski dropping some crazy weird knowledge.
Right?
Yeah.
No, but he's a rhythm player. That was the knock on him in Minnesota, was that he would disappear if he didn't get his offense. And let's be real, I think he probably gave up about 6 to 8 points in his breakout game. But those were 18. Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, you want to you don't want to take from one hand and give with the other. But I actually asked on Twitter if that was his biggest shot, at least in the recent memory. He hit a 3, and I think it brought the Kings back to within 3. He hit it from the corner, and it got the crowd into the game. And there was some question. I don't think he had started scoring yet, and I thought that was a pretty big shot for a guy with probably some confidence issues, definitely playing time issues because he's in and out of the rotation. So that was huge. The Reggie Evans thing was huge. I mean,
Reggie Evans just went nuts. Let's finish up with Derek Williams really quick before we skip to Reggie. So check this out. Sort of the impetus to Rui's piece was that last season, the first 10 games of the year, that we saw nothing out of Luc Mbah a Moute, right? He's averaging like 4 minutes a game for the first 10 games of the year. Then games 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, he plays 28 and a half minutes a night. And so if you look at the way Derek Williams went, in coming to into game number 6, number 5 of the season, I guess, he had already had, his 5th game, but the Kings' 6th game. Derek Williams played 6 seconds. The next game, game 7 for the Kings against OKC, he plays 0. He comes back the next night, and that's that horrific game where in 39 seconds of play against Dallas, he literally changed the entire tempo of the game and fouled Dirk Nowitzki 3 times in a row in 39 seconds. And then he comes back and he has a DMP CD. So right there, you're looking at 4 games in a row where he's played a total of 45 seconds. He comes out the next night against the Spurs and gets 5 minutes, but then again, a DMP CD. So we're looking at a 6-game stretch where he plays a total of like 5 minutes and 45 seconds. That's it. And then, boom, 22 minutes, 30 minutes, 17 minutes. You're like, uh-oh, what's going on? And it's John Santiago's old showcase. He's being showcased. And so Rui wrote from that point of view, like, look, this is what's going on with Derek Williams, most likely. The Kings get a couple of nice wins in that, and then, the wheels start to fall off the bus. But now we're at a place where, is Derek Williams a chip? Is he a guy that you can get some playing time? Is he going to be aggressive like he was against Toronto, or is he going to be the disaster that we've seen on and off throughout his career with the Kings? I just don't know what we're going to get out of this guy at all.
This is what I think you're going to get, because he's really been the same guy forever. in Minnesota, Rick Adelman would pull his hair out because he would make a great play on one end and then just lose his guy. I mean, there was a play actually where Derek was running down the court and jogging, and Jason Thompson in a dead sprint, I mean, passes him after Williams had at least a half court head start, and Thompson went in and affected the play and kept it alive, basically almost blocked the shot, and you saw Mike Malone just staring at him, burning a hole in the back of his jersey, and there's been too much of that stuff to let it slide. So if he's hot, he's going to stay on the court, particularly when the Kings need that type of effort out of their second unit being shorthanded. But the minute that there's one of those trademark defensive lapses, and sometimes it's energy and sometimes it's just awareness, he's got maybe one or two strikes, and then he's going to get yanked out of the game.
Yeah, okay, so we've beat Derek Williams to, a pulp here with the aggressive. I mean, aggressive Derek Williams is good. Any other Derek Williams is not good. Let's just be honest. He just doesn't do enough. Most games I look at Derek Williams and I think, what exactly can you get out of him? I mean, he's not really a true jump shooter. He's not really a drive guy. It comes down to whether or not he's going to get hot doing something that's sort of fluky, and then he's going to make his name that way. So I think it's an interesting thing to look at it, just like the evolution of Derek Williams as a player. But from my point of view, if I'm the Kings, Derek Williams is no longer really a player. He's a $6.2 million trade chip, and he's an expiring contract for a lot of teams. And I think that's the way a lot of teams around the league are looking at him. Now, the other guy that we're going to transition here to is Reggie Evans. And first of all, Reggie Evans is 34 years old. He's not getting any younger. But you see Reggie Evans in the locker room, and there's not a guy in the locker room in better shape than Reggie Evans. I mean, the dude is absolutely built like a crazy person. So Reggie Evans doesn't play for 7 straight games. He's completely out of the rotation, and the Kings are playing well. DeMarcus Cousins gets sick, and Reggie Evans gets the call against Memphis because the wheels are falling off the bus. And he comes in and he gives you 17 and 20. And for that matter, he plays defense too. He plays spectacular defense. You're like, what in the world is going on here?
I'll take umbrage to the defensive thing because I love Reggie Evans. I don't know how you can't love Reggie Evans unless you're an opponent that is getting borderline molested by Reggie Evans, which I think is also a sign of a good defender. Is if you can, like Mike Malone always preaches, they got to feel you. Reggie Evans definitely makes you feel him. I've seen him get burned too many times. Laterally, he's so top heavy that he can get beat very easily. He's not very good with his spatial awareness, but throw all that stuff. I'll throw that all out the window. When you got a guy that can come in off the bench and just single-handedly take care of the glass, and that's his thing. You're gonna get that no matter what. There's not a player on the court that's focusing on that the way he is.
Yeah, just get out of his way if you value your teeth. Just clear out and let him go grab everything. I mean, it's remarkable to watch. I mean, in that game he had 20 rebounds, 9 of them offensive.
And he brings the crowd to their feet, and that's an important thing in a place like Sleep Train, which is known for its crazy fans and how they can help push the energy. So you could tell Malone doesn't want to go to him for more than 20 minutes a game because a lot of times the defensive issues, the fouling, that stuff will negate the good that he brings to the table. But in spurts, and when he's had these games in the past, he's done it for Brooklyn and maybe a couple times for the Clippers. He had a couple of these crazy Reggie Evans games where you're just like, who is this guy and why isn't he an all-star? But yeah, you just tip your cap to the guy, and you as a Kings fan want somebody like that on your team, not just for the locker room, not just for the rebounding, but just for the overall toughness that he's going to bring to the team.
Yeah, you have to love Reggie Evans. He is a very big presence in DeMarcus Cousins' life, and I think that's one thing to point out, that while he has not been super productive, he hasn't got many minutes this year. He is a big influence off the court, and his per 36 numbers, he's averaging 14.5 rebounds a game. The dude just flat out is one of the best rebounders that we've seen in the NBA in a long time. You know, he's got Dennis Rodman-esque rebounding skills, and he's just so aggressive, and he tries so hard, which is something that I think a lot of people, kind of miss. It's just like you need guys like Reggie Evans if you're going to be a good team. And at 35 years old almost, this guy still brings his lunch pail. He still works hard. He still sets a good example. So he is a quality NBA player to have at the end of your bench for a night, like the other night where you needed 35 minutes. The next night he played 32 minutes, 67 minutes in 2 games combined after not playing for 7 games. And I think he gave you everything he had. I mean, there was one point in that Memphis game where he grabbed a rebound and then he looked over and there was Marc Gasol, and Gasol came up and bodied him, and he backed Gasol right down into the paint and went right over the top of Gasol for a little jump hook. And I just went, are you kidding me? Now, Reggie Evans just took the guy who won the Defensive Player of the Year 2 years ago into the post and went right over him. Marc Gasol has what, 5 inches on him? 4 inches, 5 inches on him? Just way bigger, and probably an additional 30 pounds on Reggie Evans, and Reggie Evans had no issues scoring over him. So it's nice to see every once in a while Reggie Evans kind of go crazy.
Yeah, I saw that play when he went over Marc Gasol. I don't know what was going on with Gasol, but he made him look like less than the Defensive Player of the Year, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So, all right, so this is the Cowbell Kingdom podcast brought to you by Jiffy Lube. I am James Ham. With me, Mr. Aaron Bruski. Aaron, we got a couple more topics to cover here. I did interview with Mike Bratz before Tuesday's game. And the reason I did that interview is because the Reno Bighorns are doing something that's just wackadoodle. It's outlandish, it's wild, it's Division III Grinnell-style offense. It's got to be fun to watch. I have not got to watch it. Maybe I should turn on YouTube and start watching games, or just drive up the hill to Reno and go catch a game or two. But they're scoring 139-point-something points a game. They're giving up 138-point-something points a game. It is the most wild, frantic, frenetic, crazy, out of control. In 5 games, they have 252 three-point attempts. And Brady Hayslip out of Baylor, I think the guy averaged 11 points a game in college, and right now he's averaging almost 35 in 29 minutes a game. He's shooting 15 threes a game, and he's knocking down 60% of his three-pointers. What is going on with this? What is this? I don't know what to make of it.
It's positionless basketball, baby. Don't tell the press. They're going to start making Vivek out to be a crazy man. Yeah, it's just, if I had a D-League team, I'd be having them do all sorts of crazy stuff. Like the idea that Vivek had about, basically having a cherry picker. I'd totally do that stuff. You don't get this opportunity in the NBA to run whatever weirdo coverage you want to try to run. And so, yeah, I think it's innovative. I don't know. I mean, it's like the Rio Grande Vipers. They've been doing it. What has it produced? I think it's produced, Terrence Jones was a product of that system. It's the direction the NBA is heading, but there's still a lot of controversy amongst the coaching ranks that, they don't fully buy into this basically 3-and-D type approach where everything's got to be pick and roll and everything's got to be a corner three-pointer. Yes, those are all great shots, because if you take a corner three, chances are it's on a kick out and you're unguarded. There's hot spots on the court like that, and yes, 3 is worth more than 2. I just think that I think it's intriguing. I think they should do it. I think it's fun to watch. I've even read that players, they play just a little bit better because their numbers are higher. So there's a lot of positives to it. But as far as taking it to an organizational level and saying we're just all about 3-point shots and flinging them up as fast as we can, I don't think that that's necessarily what Kings fans should want, nor do I think it's what they should expect.
Okay, there are 2 fields of thought here on this. Number one, the Kings are doing Kingsy things, which now we can kind of say they're Kingsy things. You called it earlier Vivekian, right? This sort of outside the box thinking, this gambling, trying something new and seeing if you can come up with something that you might be able to bring to the team. And I think if that's what you're looking at this as a way to, I don't know what sort of test out a system, which is what Mike Bratz told me. Mike Bratz told me specifically they're just testing out a system. They're trying to make good basketball players, and they're just doing it at a fast pace. They do think that that this could bring in a few more like free agents and maybe undrafted players would want to sign with you. It would give them some incentive because it looks like it's fun. I mean, 10 players are playing and they're getting swapped out all the time, and it's just wild and crazy. Okay, so one train of thought is that this has some value to potentially become something that goes on down the road. That's not my school of thought. My school of thought is something completely different, which that you're trying to make a specific type of player, and you're going to shuffle through maybe 15 different guys during a season, and you're going to look for a player who understands how to catch and shoot and can become a knockdown three-point shooter, and you can refine him at the D-League level to a point where you can bring him up and have him fire away. I think that is what the Vipers have done. I think that is what the Houston Rockets do. They're looking to make guys to put around James Harden and Dwight Howard. And I think if that's your approach, that let me give Brady Hayslip 15 games. If he can keep going at a 50-plus percentage three-point shooting percentage, then I'm okay with going with, building players like this. It's sort of just, you're just building a specialist. You're building Steve Kerr. You're building Craig Hodges. That's what it seems like it should be. But that doesn't sound like what the Kings are hoping to do. And I don't know if you can get a player from the D-League that's playing in a game where you're giving up 140 points a night and expect him to play defense at all at the NBA level. I just don't know how you're doing it up there. And
on top of the fact that the D-League is really, really – it's bad basketball. I mean, it's fun. It can be fun when it's 140 to 140. But these guys are all trying to just get popcorn numbers, 25, 8, and 7. Robert Covington was a guy like that. I'm not saying he's like a ball hog or anything, but he had the type of numbers where he got a 3-year deal out of Philly. It was small guarantee, but like he's, that's how you're going to get noticed in the D-League. So the type of play, I think coaches, like, it's easier to rely on that type of a system because you can sell it to the players. You can say, hey guys, you're going to all get your numbers, but pass the ball up the court because we're going to run like crazy. So that I think plays into it. But yeah, like, can you come into the NBA, play defense, and, not get exposed immediately? I mean, it's great if you can hit a three, but can you not be exposed? Because they're going to make like they target Nick Stauskas right now for your D-League player, and they're going to just target him and keep going at him. So yeah, there's issues with that.
Yeah, and that was another question that I had asked Mike Bratz. Like, look, if let's say the Reno Bighorns had a game tonight, right? And the Kings have back-to-back games on Friday and Saturday. And Nick Stauskas has had a very difficult time finding his rhythm at the NBA level. He has talent, and you can see that he's got talent. He's just having some of the same issues that Ben McLemore had. Well, it's a different issue, but he's having transition issues to the NBA level. And he's still playing most nights. He's still getting, between 6 and 18 minutes a night. It just depends on how McLemore's doing. But if you could send him up like on a Wednesday and say, why don't you go up to Reno? They're going to drop. You're going to go through shoot around. You're going to learn a little bit of their offense on the way up there. We'll send you have someone drive you up, send you with a game book, and send you with a little bit of video to watch and stuff like that. That's kind of what I would specifically look to do. Go send Nick up. Let him just get a ton of shots up, have a good time, and then come back down with a lot more confidence for a Friday-Saturday game where maybe he comes out and he's ready to fire up some shots, and he's lost that sort of what we've seen out of Stauskas lately where he's a little bit timid. And so that's what I would do if I'm the big club. And I mean, of course, Stauskas would have to swallow, his ego a little bit, but what would it hurt? Again, Ray McCallum hasn't got to play very much. Why not send him up?
If you pass up the shot he passed up the other day, as far as I'm concerned, you have to go play at least one game in the D League.
Yeah, he did pass, and then he got it back and turned it over. I know what play you're talking about. Yeah, I just he flicked it to Ramon Sessions up top, and Ramon sent it right back to him. And by that point, some guy had collapsed on him and took the ball from him. So, all right, so let's switch gears. The D League thing is very interesting. We'll keep an eye on it, and we'll keep sort of monitoring what's going on up there. It's possible we will get to see someone like Hayslip come up, but it's also possible another NBA team will grab him. The Kings have no rights over him unless he gets sent back to the D League, and if that is the case, he goes back to the Bighorns, unless the team signs him for the remainder of the year and then allocutes him down. But let's move on past this. We've got a couple other things. The Kings are going to be players in the trade market. They are. And there are some names being mentioned once again that might be available for trade. And Aaron, what do you make of both Lance Stevenson and Kenneth Faried? And do the Kings have any shot at landing either of those guys?
Stevenson, no. Faried, probably not. But Faried's the guy you want if you're a Kings fan. The Stevenson article talked to a guy I trust in Charlotte, and that was half truth and half let's poke Lance Stevenson because he's being a jerk in the locker room. And that was the Zach Lowe report that kind of started feeding the fuel or fueling the fire, whatever, to start these trade rumors. And then Clifford went out and said last night, he's like, I'm going to play my guys 40 minutes a game. And he went out and he did that. Stevenson had a good game. They still lost against a tough Bulls team. This is classic Stevenson. He's just rubbing them the wrong way. His game style, Lowe mentioned it in two articles, is just, he holds the ball a little too much. He's just not in sync. So they are probably open to trades, but I think Sam said it on Twitter. They're more open to trading Gerald Henderson because there's a more realistic market. The Stevenson deal it's a tradable deal. I'm sure there would be teams lining up. I just don't think Charlotte's ready to give up on him just yet. And frankly, for the Kings, they need floor spacers. Ben McLemore's looked really good. I'm surprised we haven't talked about him. He's looked really, really good.
Yes, he has.
The Faried thing's more interesting though because there is serious acrimony in that front office between the sides. His confidence is completely just destroyed right now. Him and Brian Shaw do not see eye to eye. I think they don't like the deal that they have him on, and I think the Kings would be happy to have that deal if they could make it work out underneath the cap, both now and going into the future, but I'm sure they could figure out something creative to do that. And this would be just an incredible piece next to DeMarcus Cousins. I really, for Kings fans' sake, hope they explore that deal and see what they could do to get him. I don't know if they would have the assets to pull it off because Denver's probably going to say, well, give us Ben McLemore and a first-round draft pick. That's probably where things would start there. So with that said, I would say keep an eye out on the Faried thing. I wouldn't get all worked up about the Stevenson one.
All right, let me break down the Faried thing really quickly before we've got to run here. Faried is what's called a poison pill player. He signed a new contract, and until his new contract, his extension kicks in, you basically take the new contract and the contract that he's on for this year, you add them all up, you divide them by the years of service, of the years that he's under contract. So he signed I think it's a 4-year, $48 million deal or something right around that. And then you add his $2.2 million contract for this season. So it's a little bit over 5 years at $50 million. You divide that by 5, and when he's sent out as a $2 million player. But what Denver has to take back is $10 million. That number, that divided number, they have to take that much back in contract. And that becomes very, very difficult to do because Denver is already up against luxury tax, salary cap, whatever. I mean, they're up there. And so they're not going to do it unless you can be really, really creative. And I ran this by my friend Larry Kuhn, CBA FAQ Larry Kuhn, who is the master of all things CBA, and he just basically said, look, he's going to be difficult to trade because he's a $2 million asset going out, and they have to take back $10 million. So he's nearly impossible to trade unless somehow you get the Philadelphia 76ers involved. So check this out. I don't know if you've noticed this, but Philadelphia is at right around $31 million in payroll. And there's a new league minimum where you have to spend 90% of the salary cap, and the salary cap is a little over $64 million. You have to spend like $58 million, guaranteed in contract. And if you don't, you have to pay that money to the league, and they will divide it up over all the other teams and give them that money. So they literally are going to have to give the other NBA teams something like $27 million. Just give them, like, here you go, because they haven't met the salary cap constraints. And so if you could trade, say, Derek Williams and the $5.8 million Jason Terry trade exemption to the Philadelphia 76ers for absolutely nothing but a $10.8 million trade exemption or a $11 million trade exemption, and then trade that trade exemption to the Denver Nuggets for Kenneth Faried and give up, say, I don't know, Stauskas and a future number one or something, then that would work. It would be like a complex deal, but that's how complex this has to be. It's almost like any team in the league that wants Kenneth Faried either has to have a massive trade exemption that they can make work in this deal, or they've got to deal with Philadelphia, who has the ability to have massive trade exemptions.
Yeah, but you know what? They're fielding phone calls because everybody knows that Denver and Faried and Shaw, they're just not seeing eye to eye. The only thing about this that kind of taps the brakes a little bit is Denver doesn't really have a solution at power forward other than Kenneth Faried, so they would be turning the page there.
What? J.J. Hickson? What?
J.J. Hickson?
J.J. Hickson.
Oh man, that's a tough word in Sacramento from what I hear.
Yeah. And look, I'll say this too, for those of you who don't know, and this is the very end of the podcast, maybe people aren't going to listen this far in, but the Sacramento Kings were all over the Kenneth Faried situation last year. They tried very, very hard to get Kenneth Faried. People don't remember that Pete D'Alessandro, one of the guys that drafted Kenneth Faried, loves him. They even, I guarantee you this, they love the contract that he's on. They would take him in a heartbeat if they can get the assets to do so. I don't know that they can do it, but that is a guy.
Pete's a smart guy. He'll figure it out.
He'll figure it out. All right. So, hey, I've got one other thing for you, Aaron. I think we're going to skip our fantasy thing today, but let's go to the NBA as a whole. What is going on with this Rondo Kobe Bryant situation where they had breakfast together? And I just got to say this. Are there two players in the league that other players don't want to play with more than those two?
Jeez. I'll take the second question. I don't think so. No. I can't think of two guys that people have kind of just said, no, I'm not playing with them.
I really don't want to play with that guy. Am I wrong? I mean, maybe I'm crazy, but
send me your comments because I can't think of one. Maybe who would it be? I don't know. Chris Kaman or something?
No, Captain K-Man is got a PER above 20 up there in Portland this year. He's averaging over 11 points a game. I mean, he's bringing it night in. I don't know. I mean, this is like a weird situation. It's like they go have breakfast and like everyone else is like, man, that just doesn't sound good for breakfast anymore. Let's go somewhere else.
It could be a Boston Celtics thing because I don't know if guys are like lining up to play behind KG. They're probably like, hey man, you're old. Stop pounding your head into things and telling us what to do. You're playing 20 minutes a night. I have no idea. It's an intense crew. Rondo's an intense guy. Kobe's an intense guy. That's great when you're winning championships, but when you're not, I think people get a little bit, over. They're over that. Yeah, exactly.
Chafed. All All right, well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Cowbell Kingdom podcast, brought to you by Jiffy Lube. Jiffy Lube, fast and convenient automotive services with over 25 locations in the area. Visit them at jiffylubeka.com for coupons and locations. I am James Ham. He is Aaron Bruski. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back next week with another interview and another segment with the amazing Aaron Bruski. You've been listening to the Cowbell Kingdom podcast.